Balancing your business and your family can be stressful enough, but what do you do when your family is your business? Going to work can be a healthy separation for us to have our own space, but what if there is no separation? We each have a unique family dynamic of behaviors, but how are they impacted by working with or working in a family business? On today's episode, we will find out how to work with family with the top 3 simple tips to make your life easier from our guest, Molly Arnall. Welcome to Lift Your Future, a podcast that teaches you coping skills through stories, methods, and proven techniques to improve relationships and outcomes in your personal and professional life. I'm Nicole Winkler, a licensed therapist and executive coach. On this podcast, we'll share relatable life experiences designed to help you grow. I will provide easy, practical ways to develop thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to impact your life, both personally and professionally. My goal is simple: to help you lift your future. Well, welcome, Molly. Thank you so much for being here today. Absolutely. We've been talking about this subject for quite some time, about 2 years. I'm probably informally longer than that. But something that we discuss frequently is working in a family business. You work in a family business.
I do.
You also know and work with others that are part of family businesses, more specifically spousal businesses. And then I have worked with my husband, and our offices are adjacent to each other now, as well with our own separate businesses. But then I also work with organizations that are family-run businesses, and I love it. I think there's a very awesome energy that comes with it. It's a very interesting dynamic. There's a level of trust that is different, that I have seen at least, that's different than working with people outside of a family organization. So
it's special.
It is special. But it can also, like anything, comes with its own set of challenges.
Ups and downs.
It does. And like anything. And so I thought that you would be a great guest to have on the podcast today to talk about family businesses.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is exciting.
Yes, it's so exciting. I'm so grateful that you're here with us.
Well, I'm grateful to be here.
Yes. So I guess my first question for you would be, what are the major differences working in a family business or working with your family? I will actually pull from a book that you recommended to me. It's Working with the Ones You Love, which I think is a great title.
It is.
And the book you highly recommended as well. So working in a family business and then working outside of a family business, what are the major differences?
I would say the major differences is it's almost like a culture shift or a lifestyle change, all in all. Because when you go to the office, it's, you have your work culture, you have your work friends, you have your colleagues, you have your manager, your mentor, boss, whoever. And it's kind of like an escape from home life. And when you work in a family business, you don't typically have that, especially now where the world has shifted to at-home work. So you wake up and your family, I mean, if you don't live with your family, they're there and work starts right away sometimes. So I think just having like a good mindset around knowing that there's a total cultural change and you have a lot of buckets that are intertwined now. And you don't have kind of those social escapes that you would in a typical work environment.
And I hear a little bit with that, correct me if I'm wrong, there's kind of more of a formal aspect to working outside of a family business.
Absolutely.
Kind of a standard of presence. How are you going to show up? How will you present yourself? Professionalism. But then it's more in an informal environment or culture sometimes when you work with a family business, because you don't necessarily have those lines of professionalism that you would have with people that aren't your family.
Absolutely. And it's unique to me because I do work at home. We worked at home before everybody started working from home. And so, I'd wake up and it's like, good morning, boss. Dad. It's just different. And you can be more informal with them. These are the people that you've grown up with and that have raised you. It's just...
So the family patterns, kind of the unspoken patterns of behavior still show up in the work environment. Would that be accurate?
So they can. And from that book, something I learned was that the typical family dynamic that you're born into, especially with siblings, like there's a hierarchy. The oldest sibling is usually like the leader. The youngest one's kind of the more like rebellious baby. They can get away with a little bit more. And those dynamics cannot translate perfectly in a family business. Same with like spousal couples that work together. I mean, the people that, or the person that does, all the home stuff doesn't necessarily make them the admin. So communicating what those roles
and responsibilities.
Yes, rather than just having this expectation of, you're the father or you're the oldest sibling, you're the leader. They might not necessarily be the one that's most cut out for that job. So really defining those roles is important, and it's not an easy thing to do because you grew up with them already ingrained in your family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're, like I said, they're very unspoken usually. We aren't even really aware of them. But so really, I hear in that too, the importance of having that conversation with your family, which a lot of times I don't sit down with my family and say, okay, well, I'm the firstborn. So generally, well, I guess I do because I have studied psychology for a long time. But in most families, I don't see that dynamic being discussed because it just is. You're the firstborn, you're the baby. And I always like to ask people, are you a typical firstborn? Or are you, because that is putting us in a box. It really is. And not every firstborn child is the same way. Not every middle child is the same way. But, there is something to that. And we can learn from it. But I hear in that we have to actually talk about it.
Yes.
We have to talk about it.
Communication are so important, especially when you're working with your family, because there's just so much unspoken, or it's like there's so many expectations where it's like, okay, really? Like, that's what I'm expected to do, but okay, like, I'll do it.
Or normally I would know that you would take care of that. So I'm not going to necessarily check it out with you. I'm going to assume that you're going to
do a follow-up.
Yeah, Molly's just going to do that because, say we have a luncheon, we have a rep coming in or something like that. Well, you know what? Molly usually does the grocery shopping and cooks meals in our home.
She's got it covered.
So she's going to be the one that orders the food and talks to the rep to see what it is that we might get. Well, without having that conversation, then the rep shows up, we have no food. I didn't do it. You didn't do it. I thought you were going to do it. You thought I was going to do it because I usually take the lead in maybe our relationships with other outside people in our business, or the sales aspect of things, but we didn't actually talk about it. So that I've seen that come up as a problem too. Same with money, finances. How are finances viewed in the family system, and then how are finances viewed in the business?
Exactly.
And so I have seen that cause some, misalignment, with the opportunity to have some great conversations around that as well, which also can help the personal life. Oh, this is how we're doing it in our business. Let's translate that. What would that look like if we move that to our home life?
Yeah, and those can be heavy topics. They're not easy things to talk about, especially if you're not used to talking about them. So really opening up those lines of communication, it's vital for success and for harmony within your family business and within the family, because it can translate into, oh, you didn't do this during working hours. Now I'm going to get on you in the after hours at dinner over, whatever it is that you're doing. Nothing can be assumed.
I think that's a good lesson in any aspect. Always check it out. Trust but verify is another quote from that. But we do operate under assumptions a lot of the time. Or I asked you to do something at work, and you didn't get it done, and you also didn't communicate to me that you didn't get it done. Well, now we're sitting at dinner together, and I'm frustrated with you because you didn't get it done, and I don't want to bring it up to you. But we have to figure out how to have those tougher conversations.
You don't want the issues from the family bleeding into the business, nor do you want the issues from the business bleeding back into the family time. Because then they're both kind of contaminated with issues. So yeah, I mean, communication is the biggest key, and effective communication around all of that. And it's, like I said, it's not easy, but it has to be done.
Yes. And I guess a tip, we'll start out with a tip here.
Yeah.
Effective communication, having effective communication within the family system, within the business system as well. And sometimes that looks differently. Yeah. I know when I worked with my husband in his business, his mind is going all the time about his business. And I love that. And that's amazing. And that works really well for him.
Yep.
I too now know what that feels like. Yeah. But he would have a great idea at 10 o'clock at night and bring it up to me.
Yep.
And I didn't want to talk about work at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
I wanted my husband. I didn't want my coworker or my, the leader or the owner of the business.
Absolutely.
To talk to me about that at 10 o'clock. So we had to really define what worked for me and what worked for him. And so for us, what worked was send me an email about it to my work email, not my personal email.
Even if I'm sitting right next to you.
Send me a work email about it. I will get it tomorrow morning.
And I'll get back to you.
Yes. And I will absolutely, I would love to provide you feedback and talk about it during working hours.
Yes.
And in entrepreneurship and family business, there aren't necessarily on hours and off hours that we define.
Yep.
And some people just don't have an off button.
Yeah.
They think about work all the time.
All the time. And I can completely relate. My dad and the owner of our business is the exact same way. And it's very admirable. He's always his brain is always going, which to me is fascinating because I don't do that way. I have to compartmentalize my areas of life. Otherwise it's too much intertwined for me. But setting those kind of like family rules around okay, these are our conversation hours. I mean, my dad, when I got into the business, he told me, he was like, this is not a 9 to 5 and you cannot treat it like a 9 to 5. And so in my mind, it was like, okay, so I'm always working, but
expected to respond, expected to engage.
Exactly. And so early on, my now husband and I would be hanging out, winding down from dinner, watching a movie. It'd be like 9:30 at night and I'd get a call from my dad. And it's my dad, I'm going to answer my call. And he would be like, hey, I just had a conversation with this client. Can you take a couple quick notes? And I was just like, oh, no. I can't. Dad, and so
I can, but I'm going to choose not to right now because that's not healthy.
Exactly. Yeah, that was way better put. But so then I remember that call very specifically. And the next morning we had a conversation, sat down, and I was just like, okay, look, I want to work. I want to be your hardest worker, and I will be, but I need some off time. When I get a call at 9:30 at night and it says dad on my phone, I'm not expecting my boss. And I can't just always be on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I need you to still be my dad.
Absolutely. Yes. Same with weekends. I mean, over the weekends, I've told him that. I'm like, Dad, look, it's Saturday. We have friends over. We have family over. There's football on. I want my dad. I want to hang out with my dad. I don't want to be hanging out with my boss.
Yes. Yes. And really, having the courage, I think it takes courage to be able to say that, especially to your dad.
It's hard. It was a hard conversation to have, but it was a necessary conversation to have for me to have just like a sense of balance in the whole chaos of working with my family. Yeah.
Yes. And setting those boundaries.
Yes.
Here's my boundary.
Yes.
I would like for you to respect that boundary. And here's a way that you can do it.
Yeah.
Because I also hear in that, I'm not trying to change you.
No.
And we don't want to change anyone. Well, we don't even, that's an illusion that we have the power to change someone anyway. But, I don't hear you saying, Dad, don't call me at 9:30 at night.
Absolutely.
You're saying, if you have an idea, I understand that that's how your brain works, and I appreciate that, and I love that. But at the same time, I need communication in this other way.
Yes.
Not a phone call,
Yep.
maybe not a text message. Whatever works for you guys, and every business is different in their dynamics for that.
Exactly.
So what advice would you have for someone wanting to join a family business or start a family business?
I mean, it's an amazing opportunity if you have the opportunity to do so, but I would say get really intimate with your why. Why is it that you want to work in your family business? Is it because it's an easy stepping stone? Is it because that's all you've seen your whole life and that's what you kind of have learned? Or is it that this family business offers something that other businesses don't? For me, it was freedom. I had worked in real estate prior, and I thought I was going to have the freedom of setting my own schedule, the freedom of my clients, but I didn't have freedom of location. And so when I got into my family business, that was one thing that was offered for me was freedom of location. I could work remotely. And that was very, very important to me at the time. So that's what I would really advise someone is like, figure out why exactly you want to get into the family business. And then on top of that, have conversations with people. Ask people that are already in the business. Ask other people that you know that have worked with their family of like, did you enjoy it? What was the hardest part? How is it transitioning from, hey, brother to, hey, coworker?
Yes.
And figuring out like what they enjoy about it too and see if that aligns with you. Yeah.
And still having, I hear, enjoyment.
Yes.
I still want to enjoy my family time and I still want to enjoy my work.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people get into it because you already love your family. You already think you work well together. Why not make this profitable? But it's not easy.
No. And I think that was actually a myth I was going to say. I'm going to burst the myth of getting into a family business is pushing the easy button. I don't necessarily think it's pushing, from everybody I know and the experience I've had, that is not pushing the easy button. It actually can be more challenging in ways because you don't have that separation where, yes, I go to work and this is the culture there and these are the people there. It is, yes, I go to work and this is my family, and how to separate those and unenmesh them.
That's the challenge.
That is the challenge.
Yes.
And so thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Now, I know it can be difficult, to not think about work, not talk about work outside of working hours. And not everybody has the same working hours, of course, as well. How do you keep your business life and your family life separate?
So like I mentioned earlier, when I got into the business, my dad told me this is not a 9 to 5. And I told him that is fine. I'm okay. If a client calls me at 8 p.m. on a Saturday, I will sit down, I will drop everything. I will work with that client. That's no problem. But between you and I, you being my dad, I don't want to receive calls at 9 p.m. saying, hey, can you take this quick note? So I asked him respectfully and kind of drew a boundary of, I am happy to do all the work that needs to be done in the morning during my working hours. And so I kind of did set myself some working hours. And I asked him to very much respect that. If he had a million ideas going at 10 p.m., to please write them down, call me in the morning, and I will happily discuss and go over all of it with you when I'm on my A game. I'm not on my A game late at night.
And some people are.
And so, yes, absolutely. Some people are. But that's just not how I work, and I know how I work. So I had to relay that information to him.
So self-reflection, really, too. When do I show up as my best self?
Absolutely.
And how can I communicate that to other people?
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that I implemented every now and again, like I said, when we were having fun days or just like totally not working days, I would kind of give him I started it as a game for myself just to see how it would go, but I would give him anything but days. And so I told him early in the morning, hey, let's talk about, I will talk to you about anything but XYZ, whatever those topics were. And then it challenged us to build our relationship outside of that boss and employee relationship.
It's so easy to fall into
rekindling our father-daughter relationship. Yeah. So that's one little tactic that I have used.
I love that.
I don't put it on him all the time because he, like I said, he loves the business. It is what he lives and dies for. And I don't want to take that away from him.
Of course. And they're not going to change it, but you also don't want to change it.
No, not at all.
But you have to have healthy boundaries for yourself.
For myself.
Absolutely. So I guess, talking through the tips, 3 tips for listeners. I think we probably have more than 3 because I heard you say the anything but day.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Setting boundaries. And so, when we set boundaries, I think that's personal boundaries, that's space, physical boundaries.
Yeah.
Emotional boundaries. I know some family business dynamics where it is not abnormal for somebody to get really upset and kind of explode. And that's just how so-and-so is. Or that's how they manage conflict. They storm out of the room or whatever that might be.
But do they do that in their office settings?
Right. Would you do that at work?
Yeah.
And so really, how can we challenge ourselves to really look at ourselves and say, okay, what do I need? How am I behaving? Would this behavior be acceptable if I were in an office, a different setting with different people other than my family? And maybe the answer is yes. I know some industries, it is more common, like construction is a more common.
But you have to set that standard, especially if you're the leader of your family business. You have to set the standard of, if something is asked, it needs to be done just like it would be if it was a different boss that was totally unrelated to you. Would you just blow off your old boss, or not your old boss, but a boss that wasn't your father? Probably not.
Or your sister or your brother.
Whatever the dynamic may be.
Husband or your wife.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So setting those boundaries, being firm about them, really knowing what you need too when you're asking for it in an assertive way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what I have seen, it bubbles up and it comes out either aggressively, it comes out in a passive aggressive way.
Yeah.
It comes out in some way that impacts the relationship that you have with one another.
Exactly.
And so you also talked about effective communication, which is another tip, huge. How do you want to be communicated with?
Yeah.
I find that that's a question we don't ask very often.
To a lot of people.
No. And when I work with executive teams, that's one of the first things I try to establish is, how do you want to be communicated with?
What form of communication is most effective for you? Yeah.
And for some people, it's a phone call.
Yep.
If it's very important, send me a phone call.
Pick up
Don't
the
send
phone.
me a WhatsApp.
Yep.
Don't send me an instant message or a Teams
Don't email
message.
me like a paragraph of something. Yeah, call me and talk to me.
Yeah, a long email, I'm probably not going to read it. Please call and talk to me. Other people say, don't call me. That interrupts my flow
You're demanding my time.
of whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
Send me a text message and ask for a phone. When am I available?
For sure.
I'll definitely make time for you. Other people, it is an email. Please put in an email because I don't delete my emails until I complete the task.
Yep.
And now we have more ways to communicate than we ever have before. However, we're worse at it than we've ever been. So really purposefully setting that standard of presence, that standard of communication. And actually I've seen that spill out into the family dynamic as well in a healthy way.
Yeah.
When we actually are able to pinpoint what that is.
Yes, exactly.
And so then the last one would be, designated work time. And what does that look like for you? What does that look like for me?
Yep.
I personally can be a night owl when I have really good ideas. It's quiet in my house. My kids don't need anything.
Yeah.
Usually the animals still need something. But I'm able to kind of get into my flow state usually later at night.
Yeah.
Where I know a lot of people, that's not how they work. So I can say, you know what, I will work on that. That's something I can do. I will probably do that after 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
So but also I have designated work hours for my clients.
Yep.
These are my hours of operation. And those are usually, I'm pretty firm on those boundaries to protect my family time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm similar in my flow state is I find myself doing my best creative work late at night when everything else has shut off and I can just kind of create, whether that be like physically or
website design,
exactly,
or
content.
Content.
Yep. Yeah. But I don't want to be working on my tasks at 9 p.m. That's kind of my morning stuff where it's I wake up, do emails, and do everything that's required of me that day. My nighttime is kind of like my free flow state. Yeah.
Yeah. So all three of these, setting the boundaries, having effective communication, and setting designated work time, while also communicating the best form of communication.
Yep.
Even outside of work time or during work time too. Those are all really setting our expectations. I think the overarching umbrella for that would be setting our expectations, communicating those expectations so we're not assuming, and then asking for respect. Can you respectfully follow this kind of guideline, or can we talk about it and come up with something that works for both of us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much. Do you have anything else to add today?
No, I think we did pretty good at covering most of the bases.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Well,
I
thank you
appreciate
again
it.
for being on.
Thank you
I
for having me.
appreciate you.
Yes, I appreciate you. This has been great.
Yes, Molly Arnall with Lift Your Future Coaching and Development.